Okay, over to you, Catriona.
Cool. So good morning, everybody. I'm sure you're all kind of busting to get at your weekends now at this stage, and Paul gave you a really good overview of the international module. So I'm the tutor for the collections module, which I think Tim would agree it's a lot of people's favorite module. It's a it's a really practical module, and it's an overview basically of the topic we're doing every single day. So there's going to be stuff in there that you're already familiar with, but it really does give a great refresher, and you'll get some new ways, tips, and techniques as well, in terms of the actual process of collections. So, you've got the international credit management module, you've got the risk assessment module, you've got the other modules, and they give you a high level overview and a high level training on the function itself. This module deep dives into the act of collecting money, which is obviously where every collector's focus is going to be on a day-to-day basis. So the same as international credit management, the collections module is broken up into four sub-modules. So what I'm going to do over the next, it'll probably be about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I'm going to give you kind of a high level view on what you can expect within this module, and I'll open the floor. Feel free to stop me, interrupt me with questions. If you've got questions, I don't mind at all. So I'm just going to start with module one. So module one is an overview of consumer credit. So in day-to-day life, we are all using credit all day, every day, whether it be overdraft, credit cards, bank accounts, and so on. So, credit is that big entity that touches everybody's lives. So, what we cover in first part of the collections module is an overview of consumer credit and the importance of consumer credit. We couldn't live without credit nowadays. Generations ago, it used to be a case where if you were buying a new utility or your for your house, a washing machine, a dishwasher, whatever the case may be, you would save and save and save, and then you would buy it when you had all the money. We've changed as a people. I think we've changed as a generation. We don't want to wait anymore. We get these things on credit. We take out loans from the credit union. We take out loans from banks. There's all these different facilities of credit available. So it would the start of the module talks about the importance of consumer credit and how it impacts lives of day-to-day people. It delves into financial literacy. So, it's a really useful chapter for yourselves actually in terms of where being able to assess where you're at financially, whether you're in a strong position or not. It talks about budgeting. It talks about making sure that you don't get deep into debt. It happens to everybody. It happens to everybody, or to anybody rather. It doesn't happen to everybody. It certainly happened to me from time to time, depending on how the times are at this moment in time. So it talks about financial literacy, remaining in control of your financial situation, and how to use credit in a clever way and in a productive way. So the importance of consumer credit, why it's there, why it's available, how to use it correctly. So it talks part very much focuses on the individual, and a lot of it, as I said, is content that you will actually be able to apply to your day-to-day life, and I certainly have them. At this moment in time, I'm paying off a car loan. I have children. One is about to start school. He's 4. We're looking at building a house. We're halfway through. So all of different things, the situations that we go through during life will all impact your financial literacy, your financial control, and hoping that you remain in control of your financial situation. So really, really important background in terms of credit. So that's the first part of module one. The second part then certainly kind of takes a little bit of a diversion, and it talks about the role of credit in a business. So Declan would have touched upon this, and we've certainly touched upon it every single day. I think traditionally speaking, within companies, the superstars in companies tend to be the sales team. They're the ones that get the glory, they're the ones that get the kudos when the sale is made. But essentially, that kind of trend and culture is starting to change now because essentially, the sale is not a sale until that money lands in the account, which means that the creditors and the credit controllers and the credit team within businesses are getting far more kudos for the job that they do now, along with the sales team as well. So it's really understanding the role of credit in business. So the starting point is understanding where does credit fit into in the business that you're working in yourself, and how does it fit into in a business in general. Importance of your customers. Role of a credit controller is not just to collect money. The role of the credit controller is to have the personality where you can effectively collect money within the credit terms, but keep that customer happy simultaneously and make sure that that customer remains a customer of the business. So rather than being, we'll say, a one-shot wonder like a lot of the salespeople tend to be, credit controller has a far more complex job where they're trying to balance the importance of the business and the interest of the business in making sure that the money comes in a timely manner within terms, but you're doing it in such a way that you haven't alienated the customer. The customer says, Graham, yes, excellent, I'm going to pay that bill today and we'll be back next month, we'll have that same conversation. Or Anna, you're the same, and Karen, you're the same. You make friends with your customers. Without customers, we don't have jobs. So at the end of the day, it's managing a very, very delicate balance of having the interests of the business and making sure the money is coming in, but also looking after your customer as well and being able to manage the two of those and do it in an effective manner. So the importance of your customers is a huge section in this module, and it really does talk about making sure that, as I said, you're looking after the interests of the business, but you are, coinciding with that, you're looking after the interests of your customer as well. So that would lead into a lot of subsections then within the credit department. So understanding your credit terms and your credit limits. Your understanding of credit terms and credit limits is absolutely pivotal to doing a good job as a credit controller, because you're the one who has to explain those to the customer and make sure that you two are on the same page. And then, outside of that, while we balance the interests of the business and the interests of customer, there's also balancing the interests and balancing the politics around dealing with other departments. As I said at the beginning, we've got an incredibly complex job where we have to people please, and we have to make sure that we are the business like our baby and making sure that the interests of the business are looked after. But we're keeping the customer happy, and we're also keeping other departments happy and making sure that politics doesn't interfere with things. I'll put a question out there. Do you find in your existing roles now as credit controllers, there a very good relationship with the sales teams, or do you find that sometimes there's a bit of conflict and people would have different aims with customers? Does anybody want to jump in? Everybody's very shy. I found with previous organizations, to give you a bit of my own experience, as I said, the sales team, they have fantastic sales teams, and salespeople in general are fantastic people, but they're one-stop shops. They go, make their sales, move on, and that's why they're good. Different for ourselves. We have to manage the longer term relationships with those customers, and we have to encourage the customer to do the painful thing of actually paying us, which the sales team don't essentially have to deal with. So it makes our jobs a little bit more complex and a little bit more difficult, but this particular module will absolutely equip you to do that, and it will give you all of the tools that you need to manage those bits and pieces that all make up your job. That's where module 1 is at. Very much an overview, some really interesting stuff that you probably may have not thought of up until now. As I said, personal stuff with financial literacy, that's just invaluable. To try and put into practice in your own daily lives as well. So moving on from there, if you move on to module 2, so biggest part, I think, in most credit controllers' positions, and maybe different for some of you, you might be with email a little bit more. So it's communication. Okay, so verbal communications, most of our collecting tends to be done on the phone. So what do we need to know, and what do we need to kind of before we start doing that? And we're not going to teach how to make a phone call. You know how to make a phone call, but you know how to make a good phone call. Have you thought about every phone call before you pick up the phone to that customer? So it talks about verbal communication. It talks about using the right words and asking the right questions. It talks about the language that we use. it talks about the tone, the timbre, the volume, the speed. It really deep dives into this whole area, which is it's really fascinating if you get into it. I think we all become a little bit complacent over the years. You know, how many credit controllers I've spoken to. I've got 10 years experience, I've got 15 years experience. Sometimes it can get a little bit lackadaisical about how you do things, and this just opens up a whole new world of, my goodness, how am I actually speaking to this person? And how am I actually controlling what I'm saying and controlling how I'm saying it in order to get to a positive result at the end of that communication? So that relates then into what you're saying, what the person is hearing. So it's really an excellent training around looking at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, all day, every day, how you can be better at that in order to make the results of your phone calls better. So what you say and what people hear could be two very, very different things. But it's very much a deep dive into the language, the tone, the volume, the speed, all of these different things that doesn't really come naturally to people. If you actually learn this and you practice this, I guarantee you'll get better results. Better results, then what does that lead to? It's your confidence. Like, the whole idea of doing this course, the whole idea around it is to develop your confidence and develop your competence within a role that you're already doing. So all these bits and pieces that you learn, if you take the opportunity, take this and put it into practice, I guarantee you won't be sorry. You will find yourself far more confident in dealing with all of your customers on a day-to-day basis. But the whole idea around the collection module is building that confidence that you've already got. And it's just increasing that confidence to deal with your customers and get better results. So that's kind of the phone side of things. Now, there may be some of you that don't deal on the phones as much as you would deal with writing letters, emails, text messages, and even face-to-face meetings and door-to-door visits. Now, personally speaking, I've never done door-to-door visits. I know Declan certainly has. He's got some, we've got a very young credit controller there who's looking to take part in the course. He's welcome to listen. So the door-to-door visits, the face-to-face meetings may be less common than the emails and the phone calls, but certainly they are worth talking about because there's an art to setting things up. If you're going to have a customer come in and visit you in the office, there's an art to setting up the meeting room. There's an art to strategically planning the meeting, and you always plan your strategy to a point where you want to get to an end result. So in that, there's going to be a little bit around negotiation and the negotiation skills that we need, again, on a day-to-day basis. Letter writing, you know, we write letters all day, every day. We write good letters. You know, how long have you been using the same structure? Is the structure correct? Is the structure of the email designed and strategized around getting a good end result from that customer? Is it clear enough? Is the language used in the letter enough to put across how serious the situation is? So all of that particular module is all around the communication side of things, how we currently communicate and how can we improve upon that communication. And it goes through all the different methods of communication and how to do it correctly and how to do it right, again, with a drive to improving results that you're already getting. So that's really module 2. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail around these modules because you will get it in the notes. And I think within the collections module, you'll find areas that you'll find more interesting because you'll pick out the areas that are more relevant to the position that you're doing. And I think it'll really start to become your own then when you actually start reading through the notes. So that's what module 2 covers. It covers verbal communication, face-to-face communication, letter writing, email writing, and all about communicating a message very clearly to your customer with a view to improving results that you're getting. You want an end result. Declan talks about focusing on what you want. What do you want? We use the communication to get what we want. So that's the communication side of things. So from there, this then translates into the next part of the course, which is understanding your customer. So understanding your customer, we start off with talking about how people process information. So we talk very much about the different sections of how people process information. So some people are auditory, so they hear things and they process things very well over audio. There's also people who would be very digital people. You know, they like graphs and they like pie charts and stuff like that. Understanding what processing style your customer has and being able to that type of person, and then adapt your communication to the person and adapt yourself to that person's personality type is key to being a good credit controller. Some people do not want to have small talk on the phone. They don't want to talk about the weather. They don't want to talk about what they did last night. They don't want to talk about what kind of a weekend they have. They want to get straight to the point. They want to hear the facts and they want to end the call. And then there's other people that really enjoy the friendliness of having the small talk and having the discussion around how's baby boy doing. So it's really equipping yourself to understand what type of person you're dealing with, and then you take the communication side of it into it. You apply the correct type of communication to that customer, and all of that then should translate again into better results, higher collection. Okay, so that whole section then moves into a change in circumstances. So reasons for non-payment. So we're now talking about, you know, how do we deal with somebody who hasn't paid? And then you're going to talk about people who can't pay or won't pay. So they're two separate areas needing to be dealt with in very, very different ways. So that whole section is on asking the correct questions, communicating correctly, asking the correct questions to ascertain the information that you need to establish what type of scenario and what type of circumstance are you dealing with. Are you dealing with somebody who is literally refusing to pay? Are you dealing with somebody who actually can't pay because of a certain circumstance? Or are you dealing with somebody who simply won't pay and why, and maybe shouldn't pay? Maybe there's an incorrect, maybe there's an incorrect invoice. All of these different circumstances, this section will equip you to ask the correct questions, to elicit the correct information, and for you to be able to make an informed decision as to how you will deal with that customer going forward. We would also talk in that section about escalation to a certain degree as well. Again, that's the whole area that is covered within the module and covered within the course in different modules as well. So you've got customers that can't pay. You know, is it, you know, you need to put payment plans in place? Do you need to defer payments? Do you need to defer interest? That whole area, they can't pay for a specific reason. How do you deal with that scenario? Your negotiating skills will absolutely be key here. Absolutely be key. So how do you negotiate? What are the key negotiating skills that you need? As I mentioned there already, won't pay. Why won't they pay? But understanding the motivation around it. They won't pay because there's been a customer service issue. How do you, as a credit controller, then try and resolve that issue to the point that you get that customer to pay? Customers that shouldn't pay. There are customers that shouldn't pay. There are customers who received incorrect stock items. It had the wrong invoice on the docket number. All these different things that happens because you can't control every side of it. There's other departments that play a part in this as well. So customers that shouldn't pay. What are the processes that you should apply around customers like that, and how do you take proper steps to resolution of the issue, and then ultimately better results by collecting the money that is owed? So summarize then, that is all around understanding the customer, understanding who is the core of the person that you're dealing with, and then amending the way you deal with that person to elicit better results in the longer term. And it touches on all those different areas around payment as well. Does anyone have any questions at this point, or am I going too fast? I do find I kind of tend to tear through this unless somebody stops me from time to time. Is everybody happy? Silence is golden again. That's good. Okay. So then the last section is best practice communication. So again, this section here will really wrap up and tie together the first three modules. So we talk again about phone calls. We talk about planning and strategizing around the communication. Now, it's not just telephone calls. It is letters and emails and text messages and face-to-face meetings as well. It's all of those different types of communication. making sure that you have a really good idea of how you are strategizing from the first, let's say for a phone call, from the time you dial the number and speak to the person to the end. What resolution or what solution do I want to be in? Ultimately, we want to be paid, but it's getting from point A to point B and making sure you plan and strategize it and use all of those tools that you've read about in the first 3 modules in order to do that. So every communication needs to have a start, a middle, and an end. Again, this is what I talk about when people say they've got 10 years experience, and I'm guilty of it myself. I'm very complacent. I'll ring a customer to collect whatever amount it is, looking to arrange a payment, please. I haven't even thought about it. I've got into autopilot. I haven't thought about the scenario surrounding this customer. I haven't thought about what type of person this is. And I haven't thought about implementing all of the tools that I now know to make sure that that customer not only pays within their credit terms, but is happy to pay and happy to remain a customer with us. So a start, a middle, and an end is super important on every communication. So you're going to use an awful lot when you're trying to decide on what you're going to do. So emotion, logic, power, who holds the power in the call, emotion around it. If you're dealing with a disgruntled client, which we deal with all the time, how are you going to basically deal with that emotion and make sure that you get to a positive conclusion before, during, and after? So before is literally what preparation do I need before dealing with the customer? During, how am I going to deal with this customer? What have I learned from my verbal communication? What have I learned from customer in dealing with this customer up until now? What type of person they are? How will they respond to me? And then after, follow up with that customer afterwards, the follow up with that particular issue afterwards. So identification, issues, and commitment, that plays into all of these communications. It's identifying the issue or identifying the resolution, and then getting commitment from the customer in terms of how you're going to resolve the issue, and commitment from yourself. So that does come through as a best practice communication. There's a lot of customer service techniques in this part of the module. It really is. It does delve into, again, who am I dealing with? What makes them tick? What floats their boat, and how am I going to adapt to them in order to get to the resolution that I want, the result that I want, which is money paid on time. So being effective in your job is, again, it's wrap up of everything that you've learned already. How do I apply all of that knowledge to ultimately become the best credit controller that I can be? And then there's a part then on using third-party agencies. So very unfortunately, within our jobs on a week-to-week basis, there are certainly some issues that we can't resolve, and there are some payments that we cannot collect. So it's a fact of life. We end up having to escalate those issues then to others, whether it's a different department, whether it's a different third-party agency. We would give a rundown on what third-party agencies do in this case. Ultimately speaking, is designed to make sure that you have fewer of those scenarios, and some of them are beyond your control. But you do need to have an idea of what to do if your day-to-day credit control skills have not worked on this particular customer. So what do you do when you hit a wall, basically? So to wrap up, first module, as I mentioned, we talk about an overview of consumer credit, understanding what credit is there, understanding how credit fits into our lives, and understanding how credit is so important in the organization you're working in. We then move on to verbal communications and how to communicate correctly with the person in front of you and therefore develop your confidence. We then move on to understanding the other person. What is it that makes them tick, and how will I treat the person to ultimately get the results that I want out of the communication? We talk about can't pay, won't pay, and shouldn't pay. And then effectively the last part of it is best practice communication. How do I take all of that information, put it all together, and therefore become a better credit controller in my organization and a better and more confident at my day-to-day job? And that's really what the collections module is all about. It's about you as a person, how you deal with other people, how you communicate, better, and ultimately make the job better for you and make it better for your customers. So does anybody have any questions on all of that? I knew I wasn't going to hit half an hour.
We know better for the next time. I know, I think it's a fair overview, well, Catriona, and I say there's no point in just doing it for the sake of doing it. But no, collections to me is probably one of the key modules, and probably one of the most practical. So even though you might have been doing collections for a long time, the fact of the matter is there is a better way of doing it. And by understanding communications, and there's areas of NLP and all sorts of other things thrown into it, that will just help you look at things in a different light, and hopefully reduce your own stress levels and increase your results. So what I'll do at this stage is now I'll just stop the recording of this particular